This is a beautiful tale of bloodshed, puppetry as art, and revenge, and is almost like a Russian nesting doll, with stories within stories. The contrast of the violence and gore with a traditional puppet show where the blacked out characters eventually completely disappear is so good, I'm going to struggle to come up with enough superlatives for this one. I was also a little intimidated by doing a deep dive on this particular episode, as I know it's widely considered one of the best ones, although it isn't my favourite. Major spoiler warning from this point out.
Spoilers.
However, let's get on with it. So we're going to answer the following questions. Was the original fire by the bad men or a tragic accident? Is Mizu's mother an absolute bitch or a damaged addict? Is Mikio justified in his initial reaction where she holds a blade to his throat? Why does Mizu let the guards take a chemi? We're going to take a slightly different route through this episode, starting with plot in 3 minutes or less, moving into themes, then character arcs, action, and boy is there a lot to talk about in this one. However, we're also going to wrap some criticisms into action, and also still have a couple of additional points at the end. The Ronin and the Bride starts out with a show bathed in shadows and fronted by puppets. This is the titular tale of The Ronin and the Bride, something that eventually returns us to the present. Mizu is in a bit of a sticky situation, and she brandishes her blade and holds off the men while organising. And having Ringo take care of the women by taking them down to the basement.
Ringo, stand guard over them.
I don't have a weapon.
Start with a kitchen knife.
Using the shadows as cover, Mizu takes out the men one at a time. As she does, we cut back in time and see more of Mizu's past.
Mama, you're alive.
Mizu.
Including how her mother is a prostitute and still an opium addict. It should be briefly noted that the opium pipe has been visible in most of the flashback scenes going back to episode 1. Mizu says that she no longer needs to sell herself as she's earned money for both of them. Mizu's mother shrugs it off, claiming she needs to get back to work soon.
I'm off to work now. We need the money. You see, I'd do anything for you.
Going to be winning no prizes for Mother of the Year award, it turns out that Mizu's mother has sold her off and taken the money that Mizu had collected as dowry. With this money gone from the house, she's chipper and claims that the new husband is an outcast and getting old now, so he needs help with chores from Mizu. And this is how she ends up at the secluded hut of a man called Mikio. However, he's not a monster and knows this is a match of convenience rather than love.
You're not as hideous as I expected.
You're much older than I expected.
Might as well get this over with.
Slowly the pair start to grow closer together, bonding over horses and fruit. Who knew apples could be so sensual? Well, except Eve. And specifically a bay mare called Kai. Mizu manages to break the mare. Mizu and Mikio develop a stronger and stronger bond as the seasons change, and Kai is given to Mizu as a gift. This is enough for Mizu to kiss the former warrior, and the pair end up having sex, an act of true, genuine passion. Mizu opens up and tells him about her revenge and the sword skills she's been learning.
I want to see all of you, not who your mother wants you to pretend to be.
All I did was train with a sword.
Show me.
Unfortunately, his desire to see all of her shatters Mizu's dream, as Mikio is bested in battle and calls her a monster.
You are a monster.
Mikio leaves with all the horses, including Kai. When he does return, he leaves Mizu to her fate when men show up to kill her.
Yeah.
Back in the present, Mizu finds herself holding off the soldiers while sporting a wound. She's breathing deeply and struggling, and when she's choked out, it's Akemi who manages to save her. Whilst Akemi might be a pain in the neck, at least this time she's a pain in someone else's. It's enough for Mizu to get back up and fight with all the strength that she has. She goads the guards into her position, using the door as a shield, but only to keep out a handful of men with many, many more outside. Eventually, the door collapses and falls on top of her. She absolutely then crucifies the soldiers outside with one of the best callbacks to something that Mikio says when we see her create the Naginata spear from the weight she carries. This is contrasted with the past, as Mizu does the same for the men who have shown up to claim her bounty. Eventually, this ends in the present with Hamata delivered to the women from the brothel for Kineo. Mizu walks away, closer to death, as we cut back in time and see Mikio return and start fighting with Mizu's mother. When he stabs her mother, she throws a knife and kills Mikio. Back in the present, Mizu allows the guards to take off with Akemi. Ringo is shocked by this. He gives her back the bell and turns and walks away. The final scene catches us up to the future, where the tale of the Ronin and the bride finishes in Edo. Akemi is there and she points out that she's met a real Onryo once, and all she could see was darkness. And this neatly contrasts with her wedding teeth, which have been stained black. In my dissemination of plot, I left a few things out, or I told the love story as one rather than switching back and forth, but this was more because I will recover them throughout the rest of this deep dive, and I didn't want to repeat myself. Did you know this is one of the only episodes that starts with the title card, which has a gorgeous little horse logo meant to represent Kai, but also everything else seems to come from horseback. The riding horses is the first piece of fun Mikio and Mizu have together, the taming of Kai as part of their love story, the men that come to get Mizu in her past, Mikio riding off on a horse, and even the horseback men who come to get Akemi. Horses, horses, everywhere. This is an episode as much about love as it is about betrayal, our two major themes throughout. The carefully interwoven puppet show where the original blackly clad puppeteers fade into the background, leaving only the puppets, is well done, and a lovely visual cue. It ties both the past into the present, and with Akemi at the end of the episode, even manages to fit in the future. There's a lot that could be said about Mizu being both the Ronin and the bride in the story, but is it necessary? It's laid out so well. What could I possibly add? The opaque ending where we are left unsure whether the betrayal was the evil demon witch, Mizu's mother, you can see where I stand on this, or Mikio with the bruised pride. I believe it was Mizu's mother for the simple reason that her mother does nothing, not even leave the house when the men come. She's inside waiting for Mizu to be killed, and it's this that makes me think it was her. Is Mikio a coward? Yes, albeit a conflicted one. I do think he'd fallen in love with Mizu, but she had since they started to find love lied to him too. With the apple in the tree, letting him win the horse riding, it was all flattery. There's a lot to be said about his reaction to Mizu wanting to draw a naked blade.
Unsheath it. Show me your blade.
I don't want to hurt you.
But I think worse than this was that she belittled him as a man by her comments about the Lord.
Okay, that's enough.
Did you also lose your backbone when you lost your title?
He lost everything. This is his equivalent white heritage shame, the same as Mizu's. And if anyone thinks that horrid things aren't said in a marriage, have never been married or in a proper lover's fight. He flat out wanted to stop the fight 3 times, and 3 times he warned her. He fell in love with her softness and kindness with Kai, and her softness with him. Did she betray him by keeping this bloodlust so well hidden, that when it came out, he'd have felt shocked? Why did she need to fight with a naked blade, which is beyond dangerous and one wrong move could have meant a serious injury for both? She saw this as foreplay. He became in real fear for his life. We can all say that we want to see all of our partners, but isn't the best part of love the fact that it changes us and makes the shadows we all have just that little bit lighter? You never really know all of someone, that is Mills and Boone, and we keep the worst parts of ourselves hidden, or to ourselves, as we should, lest we lose ourselves. Then we have Ringo feeling betrayed by Mizu when she doesn't rescue Akemi. More on this later, but he still feels betrayed. I don't know if anyone noticed, but his bell is very audibly visible throughout the episode.
Sit there.
She's better off.
You are no samurai. A samurai.
A whole lot more audible than anything in 3 or 4, which is an excellent sound design choice and made more poignant when he hands it back at the end. Akemi felt betrayed. Bloody bells, Madame Cardi felt betrayed, telling Mizu that she'd murdered them all. But there was love too. A love story shown in the apple from the tree through spring to autumn for it all comes to an end. And even with the Romeo and Juliet type of ending, Mizu is wearing Mikio's cloak, even in the present. Here again we fall back into legend and mythology with the outline of the demon in the sky. We have those supernatural elements in this episode, and again, I'll talk about this in the action scenes. So on to characters. Well, let's start with the villain of the piece, Mizu's mother. A lot of the character development for Mizu's mother is actually from what we see from Mizu's perspective, the eyes of a child with an addict for a mother. Now we've seen the mother strike Mizu, shave her head, force her to be boy, blame Mizu for being seen, and she was never allowed outside. You never actually see the men who come to burn the place down, for example, in Mizu's memory, and you certainly see the opium pipe lying on the straw. In fact, I think the biggest visual clue, as Mizu wasn't allowed outside, is the fact she was not caught in the fire, yet her mother was and escaped. So these lines are cold and calculated and blatant justification.
How honorable you grew up to be. I knew it'd be hard on you, thinking me dead, but I knew it was for the best. Being on your own, you could be like water. Impossible to catch.
The men have waited to check that everyone was dead rather than burn the place down and saunter off, with Mizu's mother shouting. There is only one happy memory Mizu has that we ever see, and it's under the blue sheet with the wave-like design. One memory. Most children remember the past very differently when they have a parent who is abusive and then absent. It's another kind of love, albeit misplaced. She then sells off Mizu to Mikio, not for Mizu, but so she has more money for opium. I'm glad Mikio killed her, and I'm not giving this bitch a best line. With his audible bell, and again working out what an apprentice does, he has some growth. Although, unfortunately for me, not enough, but I can see his point of view. Our lovely naive Ringo, as he and Akemi go through a pretty traumatic experience where he has to kill someone. They bond over this, and it has changed him. As he states himself, and it's why I'm disappointed in him. How dark does he think it is to kill an army, to be so bruised, battered and stabbed, again, that you can barely stand? He holds Mizu to standards that he doesn't hold himself to. After all, he just stood there too. His best line?
You just stood there.
She's better off.
You are no samurai. A samurai is honorable.
Our spoiled princess actually gets herself together in this one and stands firm against the men coming to get her, killing them. She also saves our blue-eyed samurai's life. However, she also then leaves Ringo and the other woman in the cellar because I think she knows her best chance of survivability is with that blue-eyed protagonist.
Stay here. Keep.
Her clear privilege showing like a flashlight with Mizu, where she treats her like an attack dog. Especially as less than 12 hours ago she tried to kill her a couple of times. Mizu is also badly wounded and has just fought off, quite literally, an army.
Tokunobu. His daughter must return with us.
I'm not going anywhere. Right, Mizu?
Do we have a problem here?
Get him.
I think sometimes people forget that where she is currently in the brothel, she'd have to become a prostitute. It's not going to be all reciting Renka to the walrus. In fact, she could even end up as a prostitute to Fowler. After all, he does stop at the House of Peculiarities in a later episode. But I think unable to see how difficult it is for Mizu is just part of her self-obsessiveness. I'm sorry, I still don't like her, and she's still all in for Mizu, but who can blame her? After all, a gilded, rich, pretty prison is still just a prison. Her best line?
Now they have to get through both of us.
You're the bravest princess I've ever met.
I'm not brave. I've been a captive my whole life. If I die today, I die free.
So we reached our wonderful Ronin and the bride at last. Talk about giving the protagonist a backstory. She's been betrayed at every turn, left to starve on the streets by her evil mother, betrayed by the love she felt she'd finally found as he left her, the hope and the love shining in her eyes as he rides away. But we see a much darker side to her character in this one. She kills the hiding man as she doesn't want to make the same mistake by leaving a witness like the boy that got her into this mess in the first place. And she's just had to kill an army. 1,000 fangs equals 125 men if you translate the 8 fangs claws that they have on their hands as a math problem. And then she lets them take Akemi, and I can see why she does it. That backstory shows that anyone she's ever trusted, from a parent to a lover, has betrayed her. And to continue her quest for revenge, she can't make that mistake again. Oh, Mizu, you feel so much more rounded out in this episode. To be married and to have lived a life where you loved and laughed. We usually barely see you smile. It makes your revenge so much more important. After all, no bounty, no man hunting you down, and perhaps you could have lived with Mikio. I see you, but I feel that in this episode, I'd start to fear you. No one is left unimpacted by going to war, whether that's a war against an army or yourself, and wanting but unable to care for anyone. Her saddest lines.
You are no samurai. A samurai is honorable.
I never said I was a samurai. You did. I'm on the path of revenge. There's no place on it for love or friendship or weakness. Now I have a man to kill.
Action in this show is always used to drive the narrative arc, and cutting between the red ribbons of the puppet show and the blood works well when she first takes out the fangs in the courtyard. As does Ringo taking off 2 fingers with the exact same shot as in episode 1. There's a lot of criticism about this episode and the door and how Mizu would have been crushed. Also that she gets stabbed and survives, etc, etc. Now, I know Mizu is starting to become a bit of a pincushion in this one.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch.
But I think it's the narrative arc and the use of the Onryo supernatural elements. And again, we have to remember that this is not meant to be a historically accurate epic. The folklore and mythology are wrapped into a tight little package. She's so singularly focused on her purpose that she becomes a force of nature, of sheer will. People say that the lack of realism took me out of it.
Dare you? How dare you?
Well, go watch some live action in this style, The Raid, both 1 and 2 being some good examples of that, along with any anime ever. Always against unsurvivable odds. Personally, I love the top-down John Wick style in the corridor. I think the creation of the Naginata from Awaits is still my favourite bit, and I genuinely had a jaw-drop moment. And again, copyright, so there's only so much of this all I can play. But I loved how they juxtaposed this with the flashback to using the Naginata in the past, and the puppet show, to her using the kitchen knife to kill Mikio.
Mizu. I love you, Mizu. Mizu. Oh!
Coincidentally, a lovely little reference again to Ringo's using the kitchen knife. Then we've got the single use of perspective in this scene, the camera never taking its focus away from Mizu. Even the slaughter of Marta is well done, his own claws used against him by the ladies in the brothel. Now, I would usually move on to criticism at this point, but because I'm recording this on Valentine's Day, and I think this is probably number 1 so far throughout the series, although it's still not my favourite, this episode is so damn good that all criticism is pretty much invalid. Thanks for watching, and I'm sure I've got some unpopular takes when it comes to the Ronin and the Bride. Let me know in the comments, and that's all this videographer has time for today. See you in episode 6, the video game one.